She was handed over as payment for a debt, but what he wanted wasn't her body. It was her soul, the past, the secret buried between their families. And that night, he whispered, "I want you. All of you." Watch this story until the end. You'll be surprised by this story. If you like stories of love, romance, subscribe to this channel. Leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. The car climbed the winding road of the Sierra Mountains like a black shadow cutting through the evening mist. Isabella Sanders pressed her trembling hands against the cold window glass, watching the dense trees that seemed to close over the road like the interlaced fingers of a sleeping giant. Each turn took her farther from the city, farther from everything. She knew farther from the freedom she had never really possessed. The driver hadn't said a word during the entire 2-hour journey from Boston. A broad-shouldered man with graying hair and a scar on his forehead, who had merely nodded when she entered the vehicle in front of the small apartment in Brookline, where she lived with her mother. Even the silence had weight in that car, as if it carried all the secrets she didn't yet know. Her mother, Catherine, had cried when she left, not from sadness, but from relief. A cruel, desperate relief from someone who finally sees a way out of the hell they've been living in for years. "He will take care of you," she had murmured, avoiding her daughter's gaze. "He's a powerful man, honorable in his own way." The words sounded like a prayer whispered by someone who lost faith a long time ago. Isabella touched the small silver chain on her neck, a gift from her grandmother before she died, the only object of value she owned, and which she now took to a world where she didn't know if she would have the right to own anything. At 22, she had learned to measure life in bills to pay, collection calls, and sleepless nights taking care of her mother, who withered more each month since her father disappeared. Robert Sanders had vanished one March morning 5 years ago, leaving only a kitchen table full of papers, with bank letterheads, loan sharks' names, and amounts that made Isabella feel nauseated just imagining. For years, she worked in libraries, used bookstores, anywhere that let her immerse herself in the smell of old pages, while earning enough to keep her family's head above water. Restoring antique books was her passion and her prison. She could rebuild the spine of a 19th century volume, but she couldn't rebuild the life her father had shattered. The debt grew like a tumor, interest upon interest, subtle threats that became increasingly less subtle. Fun till last week, when an elegant man in a grey suit appeared at the apartment door. He wasn't an ordinary collector. He spoke softly, with almost gentle politeness, and his eyes had the coldness of someone who had seen too much. He didn't come to collect money. He came to collect her. "Ethan Blackwood accepts the proposal," he said, as if he were talking about the weather. "Miss Sanders will settle the family debt with her presence on his property, indefinitely." Isabella remembered asking what that meant, and the man just smiled. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It means that Mr. Blackwood is buying you, miss, and that from now on your life belongs to him." The car finally stopped in front of a tall black iron gate as high as the surrounding trees. Discreet cameras turned toward the vehicle, like electronic eyes evaluating who was arriving. The gate opened with a dull sound, and they continued for another 15 minutes through a property that seemed endless. Perfectly maintained gardens, artificial lakes, marble statues that seemed to watch over the road. When the mansion finally appeared in the clearing, Isabella felt the air escape from her lungs. It wasn't just big. It was imposing in a way that stole the dignity of anyone observing it. 3 floors of neoclassical architecture, with columns that rose like sentinels and enormous windows that reflected the orange sky of late afternoon. Soft lights shone in some windows, creating the impression that the house was alive, breathing with its own lungs of crystal and wood. The driver got out and opened the door for her. "You can take your bag," he said, pointing to the small luggage that carried her entire life. "Someone will come for it later." Isabella climbed the white marble steps of the main entrance, each step echoing like a drumbeat announcing her arrival to the unknown. The door opened before she could ring the bell. "Miss Sanders." The voice was female, mature, with an accent she couldn't identify. The woman before her was about 50, with grey hair pulled back in an impeccable bun, and dark clothes that made her look more like a shadow than a person. "I'm Mrs. Wilson, the house manager. Mr. Blackwood is expecting you." The interior of the mansion was even more impressive than the exterior. Dark marble on the floor, crystal chandeliers that looked like suspended constellations, and a curved staircase that majestically rose to the second floor. But there was something oppressive about all that luxury. The colors were cold, the spaces too vast, and the silence had a dense quality, as if the house kept secrets in every room. Mrs. Wilson led her through corridors lined with ancient tapestries and portraits of people who seemed to look at her with disapproval. Isabella noticed that many of the paintings showed women. Beautiful women, all with melancholy expressions, as if they knew something she didn't yet know. They stopped in front of double doors of dark mahogany. Mrs. Wilson knocked 3 times, waited, and then opened them. "Mr. Blackwood will receive you now." The office was a private library that took up an entire floor of the mansion. Shelves rose to the ceiling, filled with leather-bound books, first editions, ancient manuscripts. Isabella felt a shiver of recognition. Those books weren't decoration. They were treasures. Some of them were worth more than everything she had owned in her entire life. He stood with his back to her, in front of a window overlooking the gardens. Even without seeing him clearly, Isabella sensed the authority emanating from his posture. Broad shoulders under a black cashmere sweater, dark hair with some grey at the temples, height that made the room seem smaller. When he turned, she felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Ethan Blackwood wasn't just handsome. He was devastatingly masculine, in a way that made something deep in her stomach contract. Eyes as dark as pitch, but with an intensity that seemed to burn everything they touched. Strong jaw, lips that seemed sculpted to pronounce sentences, and a small scar on his left eyebrow that, instead of diminishing his beauty, made it even more dangerous. But it was the eyes that paralyzed her. There was pain there, an ancient and deep pain like a bottomless well. And there was also hunger, a hunger that made her blush and look away. "Isabella." He said her name as if savoring it. Deep voice, velvety, with a control that made each syllable sound like a caress. "You're more beautiful than I imagined." She didn't know how to respond. She stood there, trying to maintain dignity while feeling him devouring her with his eyes. Ethan approached slowly, like a predator who doesn't want to scare his prey before capturing it. "You're afraid," he observed, stopping a few steps from her. "I'm cautious," she corrected, raising her chin. She wouldn't let herself be intimidated, no matter how much he affected her. Ethan smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who was used to getting what he wanted. Good. Cautious women live longer. He walked to an oak desk and served 2 glasses of red wine. "Do you know why you're here?" "Because my father owes you money, and now I'm the payment." That's a very simplified version of the truth. He extended a glass to her. Isabella hesitated, but eventually accepted. The wine was sweet and strong, leaving the taste of ripe cherries in her mouth. "Your father owes me much more than money, Isabella. He owes me a life." Her blood froze. "What do you mean?" "Sit down." It wasn't a request. Ethan pointed to a leather armchair near the fireplace. "We have much to discuss." Isabella sat down but kept her back straight. Ethan remained standing, leaning against the desk, watching her as if trying to decipher a code. "Did your mother tell you how your father disappeared?" "He had financial problems. He owed money to many people. One morning he was simply gone." She lied. The statement was said with a coldness that made Isabella shrink back. "Robert Sanders didn't run away because of common debts. He ran because he betrayed my trust in a way that resulted in my sister's death." The glass almost slipped from Isabella's hands. "Your sister?" "Claire. She was 25 when she died. A lawyer, brilliant, passionate about life." Ethan's voice became lower, laden with a pain he could barely control. She was also too naive for her own good. She believed she could save anyone. He moved away from the desk and went to a shelf, picking up a silver picture frame that was facing down. When he showed it to Isabella, she saw a beautiful woman with curly hair and a luminous smile. There was something familiar about that face, but she couldn't identify what. Claire was investigating a money laundering network involving several companies in Boston. Your father was an accountant for one of them. She convinced him to be an informant, promised that he would be protected if he cooperated. Ethan put the picture frame back on the shelf, but this time left it facing forward. 3 days after Robert delivered the documents, Claire was found dead in her office parking lot, shot in the head, execution style as they say in movies. Isabella felt nauseated. And my father? Disappeared the same night. Took the money I had paid him for the information and vanished, leaving my sister dead and you and your mother behind. Ethan took a sip of wine, but his eyes never left her face. It took 5 years until I discovered where you were. So you came after us for revenge. Initially, yes, he admitted without hesitation. I wanted to make Robert pay for what he did, but he remains missing and you and your mother were in need. I realized he abandoned you the same way he abandoned Claire. Isabella rose abruptly, leaving the glass on the side table. So you decided to punish us in his place? No. Ethan approached, and this time came close enough for her to smell his skin. Something woody and masculine that confused her senses. I decided to offer you a choice. What choice? My mother said I had no option. Your mother was desperate. I told her you could settle the debt by coming to live here. I didn't specify for how long, nor under what conditions. He raised his hand and lightly touched her face, making her tremble. The choice is yours, Isabella. You can leave right now if you wish. I'll have Mrs. Wilson prepare the car. She blinked, confused. And the debt? Will be forgiven anyway. Why? Because I looked at you and saw something I haven't seen in a long time. What? Hope. The word hung between them like a dangerous promise. Isabella knew she should leave. Everything about this man screamed danger, but there was something in his eyes, a vulnerability hidden beneath all that hardness that made her want to stay. And if I choose to stay, what do you expect from me? Honesty, presence, and... He paused, as if deciding how much to reveal. That you help me understand some things. What kind of things? You'll discover, if you stay. Isabella looked around the office, at all those books that told stories of other lives, other times. She thought of her mother, the bills that could finally be paid, the chance of a different life. She also thought of the man before her, who carried the pain of loss like a second skin. I'll stay, she said, before courage abandoned her. The smile that spread across Ethan's face was slow and devastatingly seductive. Excellent. Mrs. Wilson will show you to your quarters. Dinner is at 8. Dress appropriately. He turned to leave, but she called him. Ethan? Yes? You said my father betrayed your trust, but I am not my father. He studied her for a long moment. No, you're not, and that's exactly why you're here. After he left, Isabella remained, alone in the office for a few minutes, trying to process everything she had just heard. Her entire life had been a lie. The father she imagined fleeing because of debts was actually a man who had caused the death of an innocent woman. And now she was in the house of that woman's brother, a man who could destroy her with a flick of his fingers, but who had chosen to give her an option. Mrs. Wilson appeared at the door. Miss, may I show you to your quarters? Isabella followed the housekeeper through corridors that seemed to stretch infinitely. The house was a labyrinth of luxury and melancholy, with somber portraits and antique furniture that seemed to hold stories she didn't know. They climbed a side staircase, narrower than the main one, and stopped in front of an oak door on the second floor. This will be your room, said Mrs. Wilson, opening the door. The room was 3 times larger than the one she shared with her mother in Boston. A 4-poster bed with dark blue silk curtains dominated the center, flanked by carved mahogany nightstands. There was a velvet armchair near a window overlooking the gardens, a study desk with an antique lamp, and a door leading to a private bathroom of white marble. But what caught her attention most was the bookshelf filled with books. They weren't decoration, as she had initially suspected. They were books on restoration, conservation, art history, bookbinding. Someone had prepared this room specifically for her. Mr. Blackwood had some books organized that he thought might interest you, explained Mrs. Wilson, noticing Isabella's gaze. Your luggage is already in the closet. If you need anything, there's an intercom near the bed. When she was alone, Isabella approached the window. The gardens stretched as far as she could see, with fountains, statues, and a small pavilion in the distance. Everything too perfect, like a stage set up to impress. But there was something disturbing about that perfection, as if it hid dark secrets. She opened the closet and found her simple clothes hanging next to expensive dresses that definitely weren't hers. Silk dresses, satin, delicate laces, all in her exact size. There were also jewels in a velvet box, pearl necklaces, diamond earrings, gold bracelets. He was dressing her like a doll. The idea should bother her, but there was something seductive about the generosity, the attention to detail. Ethan Blackwood was not an ordinary man. She chose a navy blue silk dress, simple but elegant, and changed. When she looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, she almost didn't recognize herself. The dress accentuated her modest curves and made her almond-shaped eyes look larger. She let her brown hair, which she usually kept tied back, fall in soft waves over her shoulders. At precisely 8 o'clock, she went down for dinner. Mrs. Wilson was waiting for her in the hall and led her to an intimate dining room, very different from the grandeur of the rest of the house. A round table for 4, lit candles, fresh flowers. Ethan was already there, wearing a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong, masculine forearms. When he saw her, his eyes fixed on her in a way that made heat spread throughout her body. "You look beautiful." "Thank you for the dress and for the books. I hope you find something interesting to read." He pulled out a chair for her to sit. The chivalrous gesture contrasted with the intensity of his gaze. "Are you hungry?" Dinner was served by silent staff. Grilled salmon, mushroom risotto, white wine that cost more than the monthly salary she earned at the library. They talked about books, art, travel. Ethan was intelligent in a way that fascinated her. New authors she had only read about, places she dreamed of visiting. But there was something else happening beneath the surface of the civilized conversation. Each time he looked at her, each time their fingers accidentally touched when he poured more wine, Isabella felt an electric current run through her skin. It was attraction, but also something more dangerous. It was fascination. "Have you been restoring books for long?" he asked. "Since I was 17. Started as a hobby, then became work. There's something therapeutic about taking something broken and bringing it back to life." "Interesting philosophy." Ethan took a sip of wine, watching her over the glass. "Do you believe everything broken can be fixed?" "Depends on how much of the original structure still exists. Sometimes the piece is so damaged, it's impossible to save. Other times the scars become part of the beauty." "And people? Can they be restored?" The question hung between them, laden with meanings Isabella couldn't fully decipher. "I believe so, but the person needs to want to be restored." After dinner, Ethan took her to see the main library. It was even larger than the office, with 3 floors connected by spiral staircases and wrought iron walkways. There were sections dedicated to history, literature, science, art. Many of the books were rare, some unique. "My grandfather started this collection," explained Ethan, walking between the shelves like a king inspecting his kingdom. "My father continued it. I added some pieces in recent years." "It's extraordinary." Isabella ran her fingers over the leather spines, feeling the history contained in each volume. "Must have cost a fortune." "Money is just paper, Isabella. Knowledge is eternal." They arrived at a section closed by glass doors. Through the glass she could see even older books, some that looked like medieval manuscripts. "And these? Private collection. Perhaps I'll show you someday." "Why not now?" Ethan turned to her and there was something predatory in his eyes, because some things need to be earned, not given. The intensity of his gaze made Isabella take a step back, but he approached, cornering her against the bookshelf. Their bodies were almost touching and she could feel the heat emanating from him. "You have no idea what you do to me," he murmured. his voice hoarse and low. "What do I do? You make me remember that I'm human." Before she could respond, he pulled away abruptly as if he had burned himself. "It's late. You must be tired from the journey." The sudden change in mood left her confused. "Ethan." "Good night, Isabella." He left the library without looking back, leaving her alone among thousands of books and a feeling that something important had just happened between them. Back in her room, Isabella couldn't sleep. She stood by the window, watching the house lights go out one by one until only a few remained on. One of them came from a third-floor window where she could see Ethan's silhouette pacing back and forth. He couldn't sleep either. She thought about the conversation during dinner, the way he had looked at her in the library, the intimacy that had arisen between them despite knowing each other for only a few hours. There were secrets in that house, that was evident. Secrets about Claire's death, about her father's disappearance, about Ethan's past. But there was also something more immediate and dangerous, the attraction growing between them like a silent fire. Isabella knew she was getting into something that could destroy her. Ethan Blackwood was not an ordinary man. He was someone accustomed to controlling everything around him, including people, and she had just voluntarily placed herself under his control. The next morning she woke to a breakfast tray being placed on the table near the window. Mrs. Wilson had entered silently like an efficient ghost. "Mr. Blackwood had to travel on business," the housekeeper informed her. "He'll return tomorrow. He left this for you." It was an elegant card with just a few words written by hand in a firm, masculine handwriting. "Explore the house, discover its secrets, but be careful. Some secrets bite." Isabella smiled despite the apprehension she felt. Ethan was giving her permission to search through his private life, but also warning her about dangers she couldn't imagine. After breakfast, she decided to accept the challenge. She started with the ground floor, exploring rooms she hadn't seen the night before. A music room with a grand piano, a billiard room, a ballroom that seemed unused for years. All impeccably preserved, but with that ghostly quality of a museum. The second floor, she found more guest rooms, all decorated with the same discreet luxury as hers, but there was a door at the end of the corridor that was locked. When she asked Mrs. Wilson about it, the housekeeper merely said they were Mr. Blackwood's private quarters. It was on the third floor that things got interesting. There were fewer doors there, and most led to empty rooms or storage. But one of the rooms was filled with documents. It wasn't a formal office like the one on the ground floor. It was more like a personal archive, with boxes of papers, hanging folders, and a board on the wall covered with photos, newspaper clippings, and colored lines connecting different points. Isabella approached the board and felt her blood freeze. It was an investigation map. Photos of various women, all young and beautiful, connected by red lines to locations, dates, names. In the center of the board, a larger photo of Claire, Ethan's dead sister. But what made her recoil in shock was her own photo there, an image that had been taken without her knowledge, probably from a distance when she was leaving the library where she worked. A blue line connected her to Claire, and there was a word written in large letters next to her photo. Key. Her hands trembled when she picked up one of the nearby folders. It was marked with the name Project Redemption. Inside she found documents that made her world collapse once more. Investigation reports about her, her mother, her entire life. He knew everything, where she had studied, where she had worked, whom she had related to. There were even copies of her medical records, and at the end of the folder a letter. A letter she immediately recognized, because she had seen the handwriting 1,000 times. It was a letter from her mother to Ethan Blackwood, dated 2 weeks ago. "Dear Ethan, I know I have no right to write to you after everything that happened. I know that Robert destroyed your family, the same way he destroyed ours. But there are things you need to know about Isabella, things that Robert never knew. She is not just his daughter. There is a story I've kept for all these years, a secret that can change everything you think about our family. Your sister Claire came to see me a few weeks before she died. She had discovered something about the past, something that connected our families in a way none of us imagined. She said Isabella was the key to unraveling the truth. I can no longer carry this burden. Alone. If you still seek justice for Claire, you need to meet my daughter. You need to understand that some threads of fate are stronger than vengeance. With affection and remorse, Catherine Sanders. Isabella let the letter fall from her hands. Her arrival there had not been accidental. Her mother had not just handed her daughter over to settle a debt. There was a larger conspiracy, a secret involving Claire's death that somehow placed her at the center of everything. She wasn't just the payment of a debt. She was a piece of a puzzle that Ethan had been trying to put together for 5 years, and he had brought her there knowing this. The sound of footsteps in the corridor made her quickly hide the letter back in the folder. Mrs. Wilson appeared at the door with an expression that mixed surprise and disapproval. "Miss Sanders, Mr. Blackwood doesn't like people touching his work papers." "Sorry, I was just exploring," as he suggested. "Perhaps it's better to explore other parts of the house. The garden is beautiful this time of year." It was clearly an order disguised as a suggestion. Isabella left the room, but her mind was buzzing with discoveries. When she went down to the garden, she could barely see the beauty around her. Her head was filled with unanswered questions. What had Claire discovered? What secret was her mother keeping? And why did Ethan want her there, knowing she was more than just the daughter of a traitor? She was so lost in thought that she almost didn't notice the man standing near the pavilion. He was tall, thin, with graying hair and dark glasses. When he saw her, he waved and approached. "You must be Isabella. I'm Marcus, Ethan's lawyer." There was something in his voice that put her on alert. "Ethan isn't home." "I know, actually I came to talk to you. There are some things you need to know about why you're really here." "I already know why I'm here." Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. "Believe me, you don't know half of it." Marcus studied Isabella with a look that seemed to dissect each of her reactions. There was something predatory in the way he moved, like a vulture circling its prey. She instinctively took a step back, but he continued approaching. "You found his files, didn't you?" Marcus asked, removing his dark glasses to reveal cold, calculating light eyes. "Saw your name on the investigation board. Saw your mother's letter." "How do you know that?" "Because it was my idea that Ethan bring you here." He smiled, and there was cruelty in that smile. "You see, Isabella, you're not the first woman he's brought to this mansion, thinking he can solve the ghosts of the past." Isabella's blood froze. "What do you mean?" "In the last 5 years, there have been others. Women connected in some way to Claire's case. Some were relatives of suspects, others were witnesses. One was even Claire's childhood friend." Marcus walked to a nearby fountain and sat on the marble edge. All came here with the same promise, that they could help Ethan find the truth about his sister's death and what happened to them. Oh, he took very good care of them, for a while, until he realized they didn't have the answers he was looking for. Then they departed. There was something in the way he said "departed" that made Isabella shudder. Departed how? Some simply disappeared one night. Others had tragic accidents after leaving the property. One committed suicide, claiming in her letter that she could no longer live with the weight of the secrets she had discovered here. Isabella sat heavily on a nearby bench, feeling her legs weaken. "You're trying to scare me." "I'm trying to save you." Marcus rose and approached her again. "Ethan Blackwood is not the man you think he is. He may seem elegant, controlled, even gentle, but there's a darkness in him that devours everything it touches. Why are you telling me this? You're his lawyer." "I was, until I realized what he really is." Marcus took an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. "These are copies of the records of all the women who have passed through here. Read them, see the patterns, see how they all started exactly like you, fascinated by his attention, seduced by the luxury, convinced they were special." Isabella took the envelope with trembling hands. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I was in love with one of them. Sophia Bennett. She was a historian, a specialist in medieval art. Ethan brought her here claiming she could help authenticate some documents related to the case. She stayed 3 months. 3 months during which I saw her fall madly in love with him, believe that she was different, that he truly loved her. What happened to her? They found her car at the bottom of a lake 2 weeks after she left the mansion. Officially it was an accident, but Sophia was an excellent driver, and the car had been sabotaged. Marcus moved away, running his hands through his hair. I helped Ethan for years, believing he really wanted justice for Claire. But over time I realized he doesn't want justice. He wants revenge. And you, my dear, are just another piece in his sick game. But why me? What's so special about me? That you'll have to discover for yourself. But when you do, leave here immediately. Don't be fooled by the feelings he arouses in you. Ethan is a master of emotional manipulation. Before Isabella could ask more questions, the sound of a car approaching echoed through the gardens. Marcus immediately tensed up. He's back earlier than expected. He quickly put on his dark glasses. Remember what I told you, and hide that envelope very well. Marcus disappeared through the gardens like a shadow, leaving Isabella alone with an envelope that weighed like lead in her hands. She quickly hid it under her blouse and ran back to the house, going up to her room before Ethan could see her. She locked the door and opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside were photos, documents, newspaper clippings, all about different women, but with similar stories. All young, all beautiful, all with some connection to Claire's case. The first was Leticia Santos, 24, investigative journalist. She had stayed at the mansion for 2 months in 2020, allegedly helping Ethan track possible contacts of Claire. Found dead in her apartment 3 weeks after leaving the property, apparent overdose of medication. The second was Amanda Pereira, 26, psychologist. She had stayed 4 months at the mansion in 2021, supposedly helping Ethan deal with the trauma of loss. Died in a car accident on the road leading back to the city. The third was Sophia Bennett, the woman Marcus had fallen in love with. 28, historian, 3 months at the mansion in 2022, car found at the bottom of the lake. And there were more, 6 women in total, all dead under suspicious circumstances after leaving Ethan's property. Isabella felt nauseated. Was she in the house with a serial killer, or was Marcus lying, trying to manipulate her for reasons she couldn't understand? A soft knock on the door made her quickly hide the papers under the mattress. Isabella. It was Ethan's voice. May I come in? She opened the door, trying to control her facial expression. Ethan was standing in the corridor, still wearing the suit he had traveled in. He looked tired, but his eyes lit up when they saw her. I missed you, he said simply. The words should have warmed her, but after what Marcus had revealed, they sounded sinister. How was the trip? Productive, but I would have preferred to stay here with you. He approached, and she had to force herself not to back away. Mrs. Wilson told me you explored the house. Did you find anything interesting? It was a test. She could see it in his eyes. Just fascinating books in the library, and the gardens are beautiful. Anything else? I met your lawyer, Marcus. He came here today. Ethan's expression subtly changed. It became harder, more dangerous. Marcus doesn't work for me anymore. What did he want? He didn't say specifically, just introduced himself and left. Ethan studied her for a long moment, as if trying to read her thoughts. Marcus sometimes says things he shouldn't. If he told you anything that worried you, I'd like to clarify. What kind of thing would he tell me? Stories about my past, about women who were here before you. Ethan entered the room and closed the door behind him. Stories that are only half true. Isabella felt her heart race, not just because of his words, but because of his proximity. Even suspecting he might be dangerous, her body still reacted to his masculine presence. Were there other women here? There were, he admitted without hesitation, but not for the reasons Marcus probably suggested. What reasons? Ethan walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where she had spoken with Marcus. After Claire died, I became obsessed with finding the truth. I brought people who I thought could help. Some were experts, others were witnesses, still others were experiments. Experiments. attempts to recreate the circumstances that led to her death, to understand the minds of the people involved. He turned to face her, and there was a vulnerability in his eyes that disconcerted her. I was lost, Isabella. Desperate. I did things I'm not proud of. And those women, what happened to them? Some discovered truths they preferred not to. No others realized I was too broken to be fixed. All eventually chose to leave. Marcus said they died. Marcus is a bitter man who lost the woman he loved because she fell in love with me. Keithan approached her again. Sophia really died, and it was a tragedy. But it wasn't because of me. She was unstable, obsessed, and when she realized I couldn't love her the way she wanted, she preferred to end everything rather than live with rejection. And the others? They're alive and well, living their lives far from here. Marcus has false documents to support his conspiracy theories because he needs a villain for his own pain. Isabella wanted to believe him. Every fiber of her being wanted to believe that the man who made her heart race and her skin burn wasn't a killer, but there was too much at stake to simply accept his version of the facts. Why should I believe you and not him? Because unlike him, I'm not trying to frighten you into running away. Ethan raised his hand and touched her face gently. I'm trying to convince you to stay. His touch sent waves of heat throughout her body. It was wrong to feel attracted to him when there were so many doubts, so many secrets, but the attraction was stronger than logic. Ethan, have dinner with me tonight, not in the formal dining room, in my private quarters. Let me show you who I really am, not the stories others tell about me. It was dangerous. Everything about that invitation screamed danger, but she heard herself saying, "All right." The smile that spread across his face was devastating. At 9, Mrs. Wilson will show you the way. After he left, Isabella stood in the middle of the room trying to decide whom to believe. Ethan, with his intense eyes and touches that set her on fire, or Marcus, with his sinister stories and too convenient evidence. She decided she needed more information before reaching any conclusion. She waited until late afternoon when the house was quieter and went down to the library. If Ethan was being honest about the other women, there should be records of their stays in the house. She found what she was looking for in an administrative section she hadn't noticed before. Records of temporary employees, consulting contracts, lodging invoices, and there they were. Contracts signed by 4 of the 6 women mentioned by Marcus. Leticia Santos had been hired as a communications consultant, Amanda Pereira as a psychological trauma specialist, Sophia Bennett as a medieval art consultant. All had legitimate contracts, generous salaries, and rigorous confidentiality clauses. But there was something else in the files that intrigued her. Receipts for substantial bank transfers to these women's families after their deaths. Had Ethan paid compensation to the families, or was he buying their silence? Found what you were looking for? Isabella turned, startled. Mrs. Wilson was standing at the entrance to the section, with an expression she couldn't interpret. I was just investigating whether Mr. Blackwood is a murderer. Mrs. Wilson approached and took one of the files from Isabella's hands. You wouldn't be the first to suspect. So you know about the other women? I knew them. I took care of them while they were here. Mrs. Wilson put the file back in its place. And I can tell you that each of them arrived here the same way you did, full of doubts and fears, and each of them discovered that Mr. Blackwood isn't the monster he seems to be at first glance. But they died. Some died. Life is dangerous. Miss Sanders, especially when you're involved in investigations about powerful and violent people. Mrs. Wilson looked at her with tired but kind eyes. Mr. Blackwood didn't kill those women, but his investigations into Claire's death may have led other people to silence them. Other people? The same people who killed Claire. Mr. Blackwood. Maybe many things, controlling, obsessed, even cruel when necessary. But he's not a cold-blooded killer. Isabella felt a relief she hadn't expected. How can you be so sure? Because I saw him suffer each time one of them died. Because I saw him blame himself withdraw further into himself, and because I saw him take increasingly extreme measures to protect the women who came after. What kind of measures? Discreet security, investigations into possible threats, and when he realizes one of them is in danger, he sends her away from here as quickly as possible, even if it means never seeing her again. Mrs. Wilson paused, studying Isabella carefully. But with you it's different. Different how? He doesn't want to send you away. On the contrary, he's doing everything to keep you here, and that worries me. Why? Because it means you're more important to him than his own safety, and men in love make dangerous choices. Mrs. Wilson's words echoed in Isabella's mind as she got ready for dinner. She chose a blood-red silk dress she had found in the closet, something that accentuated her curves in a way that made her feel powerful and feminine at the same time. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The dress, the subtle makeup, the hair loose in sensual waves. She looked like a different woman, a woman who could play dangerous games with men like Ethan Blackwood. Mrs. Wilson led her through corridors she hadn't explored before, to a private staircase that went up to what she assumed were Ethan's private quarters. The door at the top of the stairs was dark mahogany, carved with symbols that looked Celtic. "The master is waiting for you," said Mrs. Wilson, and discreetly withdrew. Isabella knocked softly on the door. "Come in," came Ethan's voice from the other side. She opened the door and entered a space that took her breath away. It wasn't just a room. It was an entire suite that occupied a whole floor of the mansion. Exposed brick walls, dark wooden beams on the ceiling, a huge fireplace that heated the entire space, antique but comfortable furniture, Persian rugs, and enormous windows that gave a panoramic view of the gardens. Ethan was standing near the fireplace, wearing a white dress shirt open at the collar and dark pants. When he saw her, his eyes fixed on her in a way that sent heat spreading throughout her body. "You look stunning," he said, his voice hoarse with undisguised admiration. "Thank you." A small table was set near the fireplace, with candles, flowers, and a meal that looked like it had been prepared by a chef. Red wine in an old bottle, crystal glasses that reflected the firelight. "Did you cook yourself?" asked Isabella, trying to keep the conversation light despite the sexual tension hanging in the air. "I did. Cooking relaxes me, makes me feel I have control over at least a small part of life." He pulled out a chair for her to sit, and when he did, his fingers lightly brushed her bare shoulders. The touch was brief but enough to make her skin tingle. "This place is amazing," she said, looking around as he served the wine. "It was my parents' bedroom when I was a child. After they died, I transformed it into my private refuge. Few people have ever been here. I feel honored." "You should." Ethan sat in the chair across from her, and there was an intensity in his eyes that made her feel like the only woman in the world. "This place holds my deepest secrets." The dinner he had prepared was perfect. Herb-crusted salmon, saffron risotto, grilled vegetables that melted in the mouth. They talked about books, travel, dreams. Ethan was a fascinating conversationalist with stories of exotic places and interesting people he had met. But Isabella perceived there were layers beneath the surface of each story. Vague references to business that sounded dangerous, people who had disappeared from his life, places he no longer visited for reasons he didn't explain. "You're a man of many mysteries," she observed, taking a sip of wine. "And you're a woman who isn't afraid to ask dangerous questions. Should I be?" "Perhaps." Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Depends on how much you really want to know." "I want to know everything." "Everything is dangerous, Isabella." "I'm not fragile." "No, you're not." He stood and held out his hand to her. "Come, I want to show you something." She took his hand and let him lead her to a discreet door in one of the walls. Ethan opened it to reveal a small private office, with just a desk, an armchair, and walls covered with photographs. But they weren't normal photographs. They were crime scene images, photos of the scene where Claire had been killed, autopsy reports, forensic evidence. It was like entering the mind of an obsessed detective. "This is my real work over the last 5 years," said Ethan, his voice becoming harder. Investigating Claire's death when the police gave up, Isabella approached the photos, feeling her stomach turn at the graphic images. Who did this to her? I still don't know. But I know it was someone with resources, connections, power enough to suppress the official investigation. Ethan pointed to a board with photos of various men. These are the main suspects. All powerful businessmen, politicians, people who would have a lot to lose if Claire's investigation went forward. And my father? Your father was just a small piece on the board, but a crucial piece. Ethan picked up a folder and opened it, revealing financial documents. Claire had discovered a money laundering scheme that involved at least 10 large companies in Boston. Your father was an accountant for one of them and had access to the real books. So she convinced him to be an informant. Yes, but someone found out and killed Claire before she could use the information. Ethan closed the folder with an abrupt movement. Your father fled the same night, taking with him the only documents that could prove the corruption. Do you think he's still alive? I'm certain he is, and I'm certain he has the documents hidden somewhere. Isabella began to understand the puzzle. And you think I know where they are. I don't know if you know, but I know you're the key to finding them. Ethan moved closer to her, and his proximity made the air in the small office seem denser. Your mother hinted in the letter that there were secrets about you, things your father never knew. I believe Claire discovered something about your family, something that connects you to this case in a deeper way. What kind of connection? I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. His brutal honesty was both frightening and seductive. He wasn't trying to deceive or manipulate her. He was being direct about his intentions, even if those intentions were selfish. And if I can't give you the answers you're looking for, then we'll find another way. And if I want to leave? Ethan paused, and when he answered, there was a vulnerability in his voice that surprised her. Then I would have to let you go, even if it destroyed me. They stared at each other in silence for a long moment. The sexual tension that had been growing all night finally reached a breaking point. Isabella could see the desire in his eyes, could feel her own breathing becoming faster. Isabella, he murmured, raising his hand to touch her face. Yes? I want you, more than anything I've wanted in my life. The words were spoken with an intensity that made her tremble. It wasn't just physical desire, it was need, hunger, something that went far beyond the body. Ethan, tell me you want. Me too. She knew she should refuse. She knew that getting physically involved with him would make everything more complicated, more dangerous. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw not just the predator everyone feared, but also the wounded man who hid behind the mask. I want you, she whispered. The confession was like lighting a match in a room full of gunpowder. Ethan pulled her into his arms in a fluid movement, and when their lips met, it was as if the whole world had exploded. The kiss was intense, desperate, full of 5 years of pain and loneliness seeking relief. His hands intertwined in her hair while she pressed against his body, feeling his strength and heat through their clothes. When they finally separated, both were breathing heavily. I'm afraid of you, confessed Isabella. You should be. I am. Dangerous. Not of what you might do to me, of what you make me feel. Ethan smiled, and for the first time since she had met him, it was a genuinely happy smile. And what do I make you feel? Alive. For the first time in my life, I feel completely alive. He kissed her again, more gently this time, savoring the moment. When they separated, he rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, he asked. Isabella knew that if she said yes, there would be no turning back. She knew that sleeping with Ethan would change everything between them, would make it impossible to maintain the emotional distance she needed to survive in that dangerous game. But she also knew she wanted to stay, wanted to lose herself in him, forget all fears and doubts, feel desired and valued the way he made her feel. Yes, she whispered. Ethan picked her up in a fluid movement, carrying her out of the small office back to the main bedroom. The fireplace still crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls, creating an intimate and romantic atmosphere. He placed her standing near the bed, but made no move to undress her. Instead, he just watched her, as if wanting to memorize every detail of that moment. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I am. Because once I really touch you, I won't be able to let you go." The promise and threat contained in those words made her shiver. "Then don't let me go." It was all he needed to hear. His hands found the zipper of her dress, sliding it down with torturous slowness. The red fabric fell to the floor like spilled blood, revealing the black lace lingerie she had chosen. Ethan's eyes darkened with desire when they saw her. "You're perfect," he murmured, tracing the curves of her body with his eyes before touching her. When he finally touched her, it was with a reverence that surprised her. His hands explored her skin as if she were made of silk and crystal, each touch sending waves of pleasure throughout her body. She explored him too, discovering the defined muscles under his shirt, the scars that told stories he hadn't yet shared, the way he trembled when she touched certain spots. When they finally united, it was with an intensity that left them both breathless. It wasn't just sex. It was a fusion of wounded souls seeking healing in each other, a primitive dance of desire and need that completely consumed them. Afterward, they lay entwined in bed, listening to the crackling of the fireplace and the distant sound of rain that had begun to fall. Isabella was nestled against Ethan's chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, running his fingers through her hair. "About how my life has completely changed. In just 2 days. Do you regret it?" She raised her head to look at him. "I still don't know. Ask me again tomorrow." Ethan laughed, a low, intimate sound that reverberated in his chest. "Tomorrow we'll begin our real investigation." "Our investigation?" "You said you wanted to know everything, so we'll discover together. We'll start with the secrets your mother kept all these years." Isabella felt a pang of apprehension. "And if we discover things we'd rather not know? Then at least we'll know the truth. And the truth, however painful it may be, is always better than living a lie." She wasn't sure if she agreed with that, but she nodded. As she fell asleep in Ethan's arms, her last sensation was of being balanced on the edge of a precipice, about to jump into an abyss from which she might never return. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and in the shadows of the gardens a figure watched the illuminated window of Ethan's quarters. Marcus stood under a tree, protected from the rain, with a phone in his hand. "She's with him now," he said quietly to whoever was on the other end of the line. "Yes, exactly as you predicted. She fell for the trap." There was a pause as he listened, and to the response. "Understood. I'll wait for the signal for the next phase." Marcus hung up the phone and took one last look at the window, where the silhouettes of Ethan and Isabella could be seen against the firelight. Then he disappeared into the darkness, leaving only footprints in the mud that would soon be washed away by the rain. Up above, oblivious to the danger surrounding them, Ethan and Isabella slept, lost in each other's arms, not knowing they had just taken exactly the step their enemies had expected them to take. Isabella woke to the sensation of fingers tracing gentle patterns on her bare back. Golden morning light filtered through the heavy curtains, creating a golden and intimate environment. For a moment, she allowed herself to simply exist in that bubble of contentment, feeling the warmth of Ethan's body behind her, the masculine scent of him permeating the silk sheets. "Good morning," he murmured against her neck, his voice husky, with sleep. "Good morning." She turned to face him, and what she saw in his eyes made her blush. There was a tenderness there that contrasted dramatically with the dangerous man everyone knew. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in years." Ethan pulled her closer, nestling his face in her neck. "You make me forget the nightmares." There was a vulnerability in this confession that touched something deep in Isabella's heart. She ran her fingers through his dark hair, noticing the grey at his temples that made him look more distinguished. "What kind of nightmares?" "Claire, the night she died. Sometimes I dream I arrive in time to save her. Other times," he paused, his jaw tightening, "other times I dream I'm the one pulling the trigger." "Why would you dream about that?" "Survivor's guilt. If I had been more careful, if I had better protected her investigation, if I had seen the danger sooner. Ethan pulled back slightly to look her in the eyes. 5 years of if only can drive a man insane. Isabella touched his face gently. You can't blame yourself for her death forever. I can and I will, until I find who really killed Claire and make them pay. The coldness that returned to his eyes reminded her of who he really was. Ethan Blackwood wasn't just the tender lover who had held her during the night. He was a man capable of violence, someone who had built an empire through methods she probably didn't want to know. And after you find the culprits, what happens? I don't know. I've never thought beyond revenge. Maybe it's time to start thinking. A small smile curved his lips. Are you suggesting I plan for a future? I'm suggesting you consider the possibility that life can exist beyond pain. Before Ethan could respond, a discreet knock on the door interrupted them. Mrs. Wilson entered with a breakfast tray, keeping her eyes carefully averted from the bed where they were obviously naked under the sheets. Mr. Blackwood, I apologize for the interruption, but urgent news has arrived. Ethan sat up immediately, pulling a sheet to cover his torso. What kind of news? Marcus was found dead this morning. Isabella's blood froze. The man who had tried to warn her about Ethan the night before was dead. How? Asked Ethan, his voice controlled but with a dangerous edge. Apparent suicide. They found his body in his car at the bottom of the same lake where Sophia Bennett died. There's a letter. Mrs. Wilson extended an envelope to Ethan. He opened it and read quickly, his face becoming increasingly somber. What does it say? Asked Isabella. That he could no longer live with the guilt of having helped me destroy innocent women. That Sophia was the only good thing in his life, and that losing her to my sick obsession drove him to despair. Ethan crumpled the letter forcefully. It's a complete confession, admitting that he made up stories about me to try to drive you away. Isabella felt relief and horror at the same time. Relief because Marcus had lied about Ethan being a killer. Horror because a man had died, possibly because of her. Do you think it really was suicide? Ethan's eyes met hers, and there was a hardness in them that made her shudder. Marcus knew too much to die of natural causes. Someone silenced him and made it look like suicide. Who? The same people who killed Claire, the same people who probably killed the other women when they started to discover too much. Ethan got out of bed, not caring about his nudity, and started dressing quickly. This means we're on the right track, and it also means you're in danger. Me? If they killed Marcus to prevent him from driving you away from me, it's because they want you to stay here. And if they want that, it's because you're important to their plans somehow. Isabella felt fear spread through her veins like ice. What kind of plans? I don't know yet, but we'll find out. Ethan finished dressing and approached her. Get dressed. We're going to the city. For what? To visit your mother. It's time to discover what secrets she's really keeping. An hour later, they were in Ethan's car, a black BMW that cut through Boston traffic with silent authority. Isabella watched the familiar landscape pass by the window, feeling strange returning to the city after only 3 days in the mansion. It was as if she were a different person now. Nervous? Asked Ethan, noticing how she twisted her hands in her lap. My mother lied to me my entire life. I don't know who to trust anymore. Trust me. The words were said with a conviction that made her look at him. Why? Why should I trust you? Because I've never lied to you. Even when the truth was, ugly or dangerous, I told you exactly how things were. It was true. Ethan had been brutally honest from the first moment. He hadn't tried to hide his obsession with revenge, his selfish intentions, or even his controlling nature. And if we discover my mother did terrible things, then we'll deal with it together. The word together warmed something in Isabella's chest. For the first time in her life, she wasn't facing a crisis alone. The apartment in Brookline where she had grown up seemed even smaller and more worn after the days in the mansion. The peeling paint on the walls, the worn carpet, the cheap furniture, everything cruelly contrasted with the luxury she had quickly become accustomed to. Catherine Sanders was in the kitchen when they arrived, preparing tea with the trembling hands that characterized her bad days. When she saw Ethan, she turned pale as if she had seen a ghost. Isabella, how you shouldn't have brought him here. Hello, Catherine, said Ethan politely, but there was ice in his voice. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. Yes, we do. About the secrets you kept. About the true connection between our family and your sister. About why you really sent Isabella to me. Catherine sat heavily in a kitchen chair, suddenly looking much older than her early 50s. Some truths are too dangerous to be told. Mom, said Isabella, sitting beside her, Marcus is dead. Someone killed him to silence him. If there are secrets that could put us in danger, we need to know what they are. Catherine looked between them, and Isabella saw the exact moment when her mother made the decision to finally tell the truth. Ethan, do you remember when you met Robert? Under what circumstances? Claire introduced him as an accountant who could help with information about money laundering. But did you wonder how Claire knew him? Ethan frowned. I assumed she had found him through the investigation. No. Robert knew Claire since she was a child. Catherine rose with difficulty and went to an old cabinet. From inside it, she took out a dusty shoebox. They knew each other because Robert is her father. The silence that followed was deafening. Isabella felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. That's impossible, said Ethan, but his voice was hoarse, with shock. Robert had an affair with Elizabeth Blackwood, your mother, more than 30 years ago. Claire was born from that relationship. Catherine opened the box, revealing photos, letters, documents. Elizabeth told her husband the child was his, but Robert always knew the truth. Isabella picked up one of the photos with trembling hands. It showed her mother very young next to a man she recognized as her father, and an elegant, beautiful woman holding a baby. This is Elizabeth Blackwood? She asked. Yes, and the baby is Claire. This means, Isabella couldn't finish the sentence. This means that you and Claire were half-sisters, completed Catherine, and that you and Ethan are... We're not blood relatives, said Ethan, quickly, clearly coming to the same conclusion as Isabella. Elizabeth was my adoptive mother. My biological parents died when I was 5. But Claire was your adoptive sister and my half-sister, murmured Isabella, trying to process the information. Why did you never tell us? Because Elizabeth made... Robert promised never to reveal the truth. She didn't want to destroy the marriage, and Robert agreed to keep the secret in exchange for financial support to sustain our family. Catherine picked up a letter from the box. But Claire discovered the truth when she was investigating the case. She found the real birth records, the payments Elizabeth made to Robert every month. That's why she sought him out, said Ethan. The pieces finally fitting together. It wasn't just about money laundering, it was personal. Claire wanted to know her biological father, wanted to understand why he had abandoned her. Robert was desperate, because revealing the truth would mean admitting years of lies to Elizabeth and to both of you. Isabella rose abruptly, needing air. So when Claire was killed, Robert panicked, thought the killers might come after him too, especially if they discovered about the paternity. He fled, taking with him all the documents that could prove the connection. And left me to die, said Catherine bitterly. Left you and me to face the consequences alone. Ethan had been quiet during the entire revelation, but now he approached the table where the documents were spread out. There's more, isn't there? Something you still haven't told us. Catherine hesitated, but then took a sealed envelope from the bottom of the box. Claire left this with me the last time we met. She said that if anything happened to her, I should give it to Robert. But after he disappeared... You kept it for 5 years, completed Isabella. I was afraid. Claire said the contents were dangerous, that they could put the whole family at risk. Ethan took the envelope from Catherine's trembling hands. May I? Catherine nodded, seeming relieved to finally be rid of the burden. Inside the envelope was a small golden key and a letter in Claire's delicate handwriting. Robert, read Ethan aloud. If you're reading this, it means something has happened to me. The key opens a safe deposit box at First National Bank, Newbury Street branch number 2847. Inside is everything I discovered about the corruption network, including evidence that implicates people at the highest levels of government. But there's something more important. Evidence about who really killed our parents 20 years ago, the same person who will probably kill me. Protect Isabella. She is innocent in all this, but they may use her to get to you. With love, Claire. The silence that followed was dense and charged. Isabella looked at Ethan and saw that he was as pale as paper. Our parents, she murmured. My adoptive parents, Claire's parents. They supposedly died in a car accident when I was 15. Ethan's voice was tense, controlled. But if Claire discovered evidence of murder, then someone has been killing your family for decades, completed Catherine, and is now killing anyone who gets close to the truth. Isabella felt nauseated. That's why the other women died. They were helping Ethan investigate and someone silenced them. And that's why they killed Marcus, added Ethan. He discovered something, or was about to discover. But why bring me to the mansion if they knew it would put me in danger? Asked Isabella. Catherine and Ethan exchanged a meaningful look. Because they need you alive, Catherine finally said. At least for now. For what? To lure Robert back, answered Ethan. If he knows you're in danger, he'll come out of hiding, and when he does, they'll kill him and recover the documents, completed Isabella, feeling horror settle in. Fate. Not if I can help it, said Ethan, with fierce determination in his voice. Let's go to the bank. Let's get what Claire left and use it against them before they have a chance to use us. It's too dangerous, protested Catherine. If they're watching, they already know where we are, said Ethan. Probably followed. Us here. Our only chance is to act faster than them. As if his words had conjured the danger, the sound of cars stopping in the street reached them. Ethan immediately moved to the window, carefully peering through the curtains. 3 cars. Armed men. His voice was calm, but there was a lethal tension in it. Back exit. Emergency staircase, said Isabella quickly. Leads to the building behind. Catherine, do you have a safe place you can stay? My sister in Hartford. Go there, now. Don't come back until you hear from me. Ethan picked up the key and all the documents from the table. Isabella, take only the essentials. We have maybe 2 minutes before they come up. Isabella ran to the bedroom, throwing some clothes into a small bag, along with personal documents. When she returned to the kitchen, her mother was being hugged by Ethan. Take care of my daughter, Catherine was saying, tears streaming down her face. With my life, he promised. The sound of heavy footsteps on the building staircase made them move. Ethan checked the pistol he had taken from a holster hidden under his jacket. Isabella hadn't even noticed he was armed. Emergency staircase. Now. They left through the back door of the apartment, Catherine following the main corridor, while Ethan and Isabella descended the external metal staircase that connected the buildings. Isabella could hear loud voices and the sound of doors being broken above them. They reached the ground floor of the back building without being detected. Ethan's car was parked 2 blocks away, but they would have to cross open streets to reach it. Stay behind me, instructed Ethan. If something happens, run. Don't look back, just run. They moved through alleys and side streets, Ethan constantly checking if they were being followed. Isabella had never seen this side of him. The soldier, the survivor, the man accustomed to violence. It was frightening and at the same time reassuring. They reached the car without incident. Ethan started the engine, and they left at high speed, blending into Boston's chaotic traffic. Do you think they hurt my mother? Asked Isabella, looking through the rear window. No. They need her to think you're safe. If something happens to Catherine, Robert may never come out of hiding. How? Do you know so much about how criminals think? Ethan looked at her through the rear view mirror. Because for 5 years I became one of them. The statement made her swallow hard. What do you mean? To investigate Claire's death, I had to enter their world. Do business with dangerous people, use methods an honest man would never use. His voice was laden with self-recrimination. I became exactly the kind of man who would have threatened my family. But you did it for justice. I did it for revenge, and there's a difference. They drove in silence to downtown. First National Bank was an imposing glass and steel building, the kind of place where powerful secrets were kept in underground vaults. How are we going to get in? Asked Isabella. Surely we need identification, authorization. I'm a client of the bank. I have safe deposit boxes there too. Ethan parked in the VIP area. And I know the manager personally. The manager, an elegant middle-aged man named Edward, received them personally in the hall. It was obvious that he knew Ethan well and respected him or feared him. Mr. Blackwood, what a pleasure to see you. How can I help you today? I need to access box 2847. It's an urgent family matter. Edward hesitated. Sir, that specific box. There are some complications. There was a court order to seal the contents until certain investigations are concluded. Isabella felt her heart sink. But Ethan just smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. Edward, how long have we known each other? 15 years, sir. And in all that time, have I ever made a request that wasn't reasonable? No, sir. Then trust me when I say I need the contents of that box to protect innocent lives, including this young lady's beside me. Edward looked at Isabella, and she saw compassion in his eyes. Mr. Blackwood, I can't officially... I'm not asking for anything official. The two men stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Edward sighed. 10 minutes, it's all I can give. Edward personally took them to the basement, through security corridors that seemed straight out of a spy movie. Safe deposit box. 2847 was small, discreet, nothing that distinguished it from thousands of others. The key Claire had left fit perfectly. Inside the box were folders of documents, photographs, and various digital media. Ethan took everything quickly, but not before taking a quick look at the contents. My God, he murmured, leafing through one of the folders. What is it? Evidence about my parents' deaths. Claire was right. It wasn't an accident. He showed Isabella a photo. It was a car accident scene, but there were bullet marks on the windows, and there's more, much more. About the corruption network? About everything. The murders, the money laundering, the people involved. Ethan closed the folder carefully. Claire discovered a conspiracy that goes to the top of the government. Edward appeared at the entrance to the box. Mr. Blackwood, I need to ask you to hurry. There are people asking about you at reception. What kind of people? The kind that carry federal badges. Ethan put everything in a bag he had brought. Is there another exit? Underground garage. I can take you there. They followed Edward through service corridors to the garage. There, Ethan called an Uber while abandoning his own car. They'll track the BMW, he explained to Isabella. We need to disappear for a while. In the Uber, Ethan gave the driver an address Isabella didn't recognize. Where are we going? A safe place. A property that no one knows is mine. And then? Then we'll study everything Claire left. We'll discover who killed my family, who is killing people who get close to the truth, and how we can use this information to destroy them before they destroy us. Ethan took her hand, intertwining their fingers. I know this isn't the life you chose, Isabella. I know you're scared. I'm terrified, she admitted. But I'm also furious. These people killed Claire, killed Marcus, probably killed your parents. They destroyed our families and now want to use us as pawns in whatever sick game they're playing. And what do you want to do about it? Isabella looked out the car window, seeing the city where she had grown up pass like a blur. She thought of her frightened mother, of the cowardly father who had fled, of the sister she had never known but who had died trying to do the right thing. I want them to pay, she said finally. All of them. The smile that spread across Ethan's face was fierce and satisfied. Then we'll make them pay. The Uber dropped them off in front of a discreet residential building in Back Bay. Ethan led them to an apartment on the top floor, small but well-equipped, which clearly had been prepared as a hideout. There's food, weapons, secure communications, he explained, locking several locks on the door. We can stay here as long as we need. Isabella threw herself on the couch, feeling the weight of everything she had discovered in the last few hours. I still can't believe Claire was my sister. Half-sister, corrected Ethan, sitting beside her, but that explains a lot. Like what? Why you seemed familiar to me from the first moment. Why I feel so connected to you. There's something of Claire in your eyes, in the way you tilt your head when you're thinking. He touched her face gently. And it explains why you're so important to me. You're the last connection I have to her. Is that all? I am to you. A connection to Claire. At the beginning, perhaps, but now... Ethan moved closer, making Isabella's heart race. Now you're much more than that. You're the reason I want to live beyond revenge. When he kissed her, it was with a desperate intensity, as if he were trying to convince himself she was real. Isabella lost herself in the kiss, temporarily forgetting all the dangers surrounding them. When they separated, both were breathing heavily. "Ethan," she whispered. "Yes?" "Don't let me die without knowing what it's like to be truly loved." His eyes darkened with emotion. "You're not going to die. I promise." "You can't promise that." "I can and I will." He held her tighter. "Because I need you, Isabella. I need the way you make me feel human. I need the hope you've brought into my life. And I need you," she confessed. "I need the way you make me feel strong, brave, like I could face anything." "Then let's face this together." They spent the rest of the afternoon analyzing the documents. Claire had left. What they discovered was even more shocking than they had imagined. The corruption network extended throughout the federal government, involving ministers, judges, powerful businessmen. And at the center of it all was a man Isabella recognized from the news, Victor Chambers, one of the richest and most influential businessmen in the country. "He's the one who ordered Claire killed," said Ethan, studying the evidence. "And probably my parents too. Everyone who got too close to his secrets. Why is he so dangerous? Because he's not just rich. He has connections at every level of government, police, judiciary. He's practically untouchable." "Was," corrected Isabella. "Until now." Ethan looked at her with admiration. "You really want to take on one of the most powerful men in America?" "He killed my sister, destroyed our family, and now he's trying to kill us too." Isabella stood up, feeling a fierce determination grow inside her. "I won't let him win." "Then we need a plan, something that exposes him publicly before he can silence us." They worked until late into the night, planning every detail. When they finally went to sleep, Isabella nestled in Ethan's arms, feeling closer to him than she had ever felt to anyone. "Ethan? If we don't survive this?" "We will survive. But if we don't survive, I want you to know that these have been the best days of my life, even with all the danger, all the fear, because it's when I found myself, and it's when I found you." Ethan kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Isabella." The words surprised her, not just because he had said them, but because she felt them too. "I love you too." And there, in that hidden apartment, planning to face forces that could destroy them, Isabella finally understood what it meant to be complete, not just because she was in love, but because she had found her purpose. She was no longer just the abandoned daughter of a coward. She was a woman strong enough to fight for what she believed in. And beside Ethan, she felt capable of facing anything, even knowing that the battle awaiting them could be the last one they would fight. The safe apartment had become their headquarters over the last 3 days. Papers scattered across all surfaces, photos stuck to the walls, red lines connecting points in a complex web of corruption and murders. Isabella was hunched over a laptop, furiously typing, while Ethan spoke in code on the phone with contacts she suspected were as dangerous as they were useful. "The journalist is willing to publish," said Ethan, hanging up the phone. "But he wants more than documents. He wants living witnesses. And where will we find witnesses willing to testify against Victor Chambers? All the others are dead. There's one person still alive who knows everything." Ethan approached her, placing his hands on her tense shoulders. "Your father." Isabella stopped typing. "Robert has been in hiding for 5 years. How will we find him?" "We won't. We'll make him find us." "How?" Ethan showed her one of the photos they had recovered from the safe deposit box. It was Robert with Claire in a cafe, clearly in an intimate conversation between father and daughter. "We'll publish this photo along with a story about Claire being murdered for discovering the truth about paternity. We'll say you're in mortal danger and need his help." "That might not work. He may have become too much of a coward. Or he may have spent 5 years regretting abandoning you." Ethan turned her chair so they faced each other. "It's worth trying. It's our best chance of getting a witness who can bring down Chambers." Isabella looked at the photo of Robert and Claire. It was strange to see the father who had abandoned her family showing affection for a daughter she didn't know existed. "All right, let's try." 2 hours later, the story was online on 3 major news portals simultaneously. The headline was devastating. "Businessman kills secret daughter to hide paternity and corruption." The evidence presented was only a fraction of what they possessed, but enough to cause a national scandal. "Now we wait," said Ethan, closing the laptop. "And if Chambers comes after us before Robert appears?" "He will come, and we'll be ready." As if his words had invoked danger, the building's intercom rang. Ethan immediately tensed, grabbing the pistol he kept always within reach. "We're not expecting anyone," he murmured, checking the security cameras through the small monitor near the door. What they saw made them freeze. A woman was standing at the entrance of the building. Elegant, perfectly styled blonde hair, dressed in expensive clothes. She looked directly at the camera as if she knew she was being watched. "Ethan," said the woman, her voice coming clearly through the intercom. "I know you're there. We need to talk." Ethan's face turned pale. The pistol trembled slightly in his hand. "Who is she?" asked Isabella, but she already suspected the answer. "Vanessa," whispered Ethan. "The woman I thought was dead." Vanessa. Morgan had been the love of Ethan's life. Years before Claire died, they had been engaged, planned to get married, build a life together. Then, one night 6 years ago, she had simply disappeared. Her apartment had been left in disarray. There was blood on the walls, and her engagement ring had been found on the balcony, as if it had been torn from her hand during a struggle. Ethan had searched for her tirelessly for months, mobilizing all the resources he possessed. He never found a body, but also never found evidence that she was still alive. Eventually, he was forced to accept that Vanessa was dead, and now she was at the door. "Don't answer," said Isabella, an icy feeling spreading through her chest. "I have to answer. I need to know where she's been, why she disappeared, why she's here now." "Ethan, this is too convenient. She appears exactly when we're about to expose Chambers." But Ethan was already pressing the button to open the building door. Isabella saw in his eyes something that made her recoil, a mixture of desperate hope and old pain that she recognized as love. Love for the ghost he had carried for years. 5 minutes later, Vanessa was standing at the apartment door. Up close, she was even more beautiful than in the photos Isabella had seen in the mansion. Perfect skin, penetrating blue eyes, a classic beauty that made Isabella feel ordinary in comparison. "Ethan," said Vanessa, her voice laden with emotion, "you haven't changed at all." "You were dead," said Ethan, his voice hoarse. For 6 years I thought." "I know, I'm sorry." Vanessa entered the apartment without being invited, her eyes quickly cataloguing every detail. The scattered documents, the weapons, the atmosphere of conspiracy. "I see you haven't stopped getting into trouble." "Where were you?" The question came out like a moan of pain, hidden, protected, waiting for the right moment to return. Protected from what? By whom? Vanessa finally looked at Isabella, as if she had just noticed her presence. "And this must be your new friend." There was subtle contempt in the word friend, something that made Isabella's blood boil. "Isabella Sanders," she said, standing up. "And you're the dead woman who apparently isn't so dead after all." Vanessa smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. How spirited. "I can see why you keep her around, Ethan." "Vanessa, answer my question. Where were you?" "In federal protection. Protected witness." Vanessa moved around the room as if it were hers, touching objects, examining papers. "I knew too much about certain operations. Powerful people wanted to silence me. The government offered me a new identity in exchange for my testimony." "What operations?" "The same ones you're investigating now. Money laundering, corruption, murders." She stopped in front of the board where they had organized the evidence about Chambers. "Victor Chambers is a very dangerous man, Ethan, and you're playing with fire." "You know Chambers?" "I know him. I worked for him years ago before I discovered who he really was. Isabella felt alarms going off in her head. All of this was too convenient. What kind of work? Financial consulting, investment analysis. I was good with numbers and he paid very well. Vanessa turned to Ethan. Until I discovered that the numbers I was analyzing represented money from drugs, weapons, human trafficking. And why did you never tell me this when we were together? Because I was afraid, and because I wanted to protect you. Vanessa approached him, and Isabella saw Ethan slightly back away. When I discovered that Chambers was planning to eliminate me, I went to the authorities. They put me in protection, but said I would have to disappear completely. I couldn't have contact with anyone from my previous life. For 6 years, the case against Chambers was being built slowly. It took years to gather enough evidence. And then Claire Blackwood started her own investigation, complicating everything. Claire was my sister, said Ethan, his voice hardening. I know, and I'm sorry for her death, but she was interfering in a delicate federal operation. Her investigation alerted Chambers that the authorities were getting close. So you're saying Claire died because she interfered in a federal investigation? I'm saying Claire died because she didn't know who she was messing with. Vanessa looked at the scattered documents. And you're making the same mistake. Isabella couldn't keep quiet any longer. It's very convenient, isn't it? You appear exactly when we're about to expose Chambers, with a perfect story about federal protection and secret operations. Vanessa stared at her with cold eyes. And you think I'm lying? I think your story has holes. If you were in federal protection, why aren't there official records about this in the documents we found? If there was an operation being built against Chambers, why is he still free? Because not everything is documented, dear, and because federal operations take time. Or because you're working for Chambers, said Isabella, ignoring Ethan's warning look. And we're sent here to find out how much we know. The silence that followed was tense. Vanessa and Isabella stared at each other like two felines ready to attack. Ethan, Vanessa finally said without taking her eyes off Isabella, I need to talk to you alone. No, Isabella immediately said. Anything you have to say can be said in front of me. Actually, it can't. Vanessa smiled, and there was something predatory in that smile. It's about our past together. Intimate. Things that a stranger doesn't need to hear. Ethan looked between the two women, clearly divided. Isabella could see the confusion in his eyes, the old pain being reopened by Vanessa's presence. 5 minutes, he finally said. Ethan, no, protested Isabella. 5 minutes, he repeated, but his voice was gentle. I need to hear what she has to say. Isabella felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. She watched Ethan follow Vanessa to the apartment balcony, where they spoke in low voices she couldn't hear through the glass. But she could see their expressions. She could see the way Vanessa touched Ethan's arm, how she moved closer to him, how she spoke with an intimacy that made fierce jealousy burn in Isabella's chest. And she could see how Ethan reacted, the tense posture, the confused eyes, the hand running through his hair in a demonstration of frustration she had learned to recognize. When they returned inside, Ethan looked shaken. What did she say? Isabella immediately asked. That she still loves me, that she spent 6 years dreaming of returning to me, that now that the federal operation is nearing its end, we can finally be together. The words were like stabs in Isabella's heart. And what did you say? That a lot has changed in the last 6 years, including the fact that you're with someone else. Ethan looked at her, and there was pain in his eyes. Including that. Vanessa laughed, a melodious sound that sounded cruel to Isabella's ears. Oh, darling, you can't be serious. This girl, this amateur you've known for a week. Careful, said Ethan, his voice becoming dangerous. Careful what you say about Isabella. I'm just being realistic. She's young, inexperienced, clearly involved in something she doesn't understand. You're using her to investigate Claire's death, and she confused gratitude with love. You know nothing about our relationship, said Isabella, standing up. I know enough. I know that Ethan has a pattern of falling in love with women he needs to save. I know he confuses protection with love, responsibility with passion. And I know you're a manipulator, trying to separate him from someone who really cares about him. Vanessa turned completely to her, and now there was no more pretense of civility. Listen carefully, little one. Ethan and I have a history of 5 years. We were engaged, we were going to get married, you're just a temporary distraction. It was a history, corrected Isabella. Past, dead and buried, literally. But I'm not dead, and neither is our love. Enough, said Ethan, positioning himself between them. Enough, both of you. He looked at Vanessa. You disappeared from my life without explanation. For 6 years I carried the guilt of your death. 6 years, Vanessa. And now you appear and expect everything to go back to how it was before. I expect you to understand that I had no choice. There's always choice. You chose to let me suffer, let me believe you were dead while you built a new life. To protect you. To protect yourself, corrected Ethan. And now you're here because you need something from me. What is it? Vanessa hesitated, and Isabella saw the exact moment when she decided to change strategies. All right, you want the truth? The truth is that Chambers knows about you, knows you have Claire's documents, and he's coming after you. How do you know that? Because he sent me to recover the documents. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan backed away as if he had been shot. You're working for him. I'm working to survive, said Vanessa, all the mask finally falling. You think it's easy to disappear for 6 years? You think federal protection is free? Chambers kept me alive, gave me a new identity, paid me very well to stay away. In exchange for what? Information. About you, about your investigations, about anyone who got too close to the truth about him. Isabella felt nauseated. You've been spying on Ethan this whole time. Keeping him alive, corrected Vanessa. Every time he got too close to something. Dangerous, I warned Chambers, who found ways to distract him or redirect him. The other women, said Ethan, comprehension and horror spreading across his face. You helped kill them. I saved them as much as I could, but when they discovered too much, you handed them over to be murdered. I did what I had to do to keep you alive. Ethan moved away from her as if she were poisonous. You're a monster. I'm survivor, and I can still keep you alive if you're smart. How? Hand over the documents. Stop this insane investigation. Chambers is willing to let you go if you give up. And if we refuse? Vanessa looked at Isabella with a coldness that made her blood freeze. Then he'll kill you both. But first, he'll torture her in front of you until you beg to die. Ethan moved so quickly that Isabella barely had time to register. In 1 second he was across the room. In the next, he had Vanessa pressed against the wall with his hand on her throat. If you touch one finger on her, I'll kill you with my bare hands. Ethan, gasped Vanessa, I still love you. No, you betrayed me, betrayed my sister, betrayed all the innocent women who died because of the information you passed to Chambers. He squeezed slightly more. And now you're threatening the woman I love. The woman you love? Vanessa managed to laugh even while being strangled. You've known her for a week. And you? I thought I knew you for years and you were a walking lie. Ethan released her abruptly, making her fall to the floor, coughing. Leave, he said. Leave before I change my mind about letting you live. Vanessa rose slowly, adjusting her clothes. You're making a mistake, Ethan. Chambers is not a man who accepts being challenged. Then he'd better be prepared for a war. And her? Vanessa looked at Isabella with pure hatred. Are you prepared to see her die because of your thirst for revenge? I'm prepared to die beside him if necessary, said Isabella, approaching Ethan. Something you never understood about true love. Vanessa left without further words, but not before casting a final look at Ethan, a look that promised this wasn't over. When the door closed, Ethan leaned against it, looking 10 years older. 6 years, he murmured. 6 years she let me. Believe she was dead. 6 years of guilt, of nightmares, of feeling responsible. Isabella approached him cautiously. Ethan, and she was alive the whole time. working for the man who killed my sister. You couldn't have known. I should have suspected, should have investigated more. If you had investigated more, you'd probably be dead. Ethan pulled her into his arms in a desperate movement, holding her as if she might disappear too. I can't lose you too, he whispered in her hair. I can't. You won't lose me. Chambers will come after us now. He'll use everything he has to destroy us. Then we'll destroy him first. Ethan pulled back to look at her. How? With the truth. With the evidence we have. And with your father. If he shows up. As if her words had been a prophecy, the apartment phone rang. It was a number they didn't recognize. Ethan answered cautiously. Hello? Ethan, it's Robert Sanders. Isabella felt her heart jump. Her father had finally come out of hiding. Robert, where are you? In a safe place, for now. I saw the news about Claire, about Isabella being in danger. Is it true? Unfortunately, for yes, then it's time to end this once and for all. Do. You have the documents Claire wanted? I have everything. Documents, recordings, evidence that can put Chambers in jail for the rest of his life. But I need to be sure you're safe. Where can we meet? Robert gave an address in an industrial part of the city. Tomorrow night, midnight, and Ethan? Yes? Take care of my daughter. She's the only good thing that came out of this whole mess. When Ethan hung up, Isabella was silently crying. He called, she said. After 5 years, he finally called. And tomorrow night, all of this ends. Are you sure it's not a trap? It could be. But it's our only chance to get enough evidence to bring down Chambers. They spent the night making plans, preparing weapons, organizing the evidence they already had. But when they went to bed, neither could sleep. Isabella, said Ethan in the darkness. Yes. If something happens tomorrow, nothing's going to happen. But if it does, I want you to know that you changed my life. You brought me back from the dead. Isabella turned to face him in the darkness. And you showed me who I really am. Showed me that I'm strong enough to fight for what I believe in. They made love that night with a desperate intensity, as if it were the last time. Each touch, each kiss, each whisper carried the weight of all the love they felt and all the fear of losing it. I love you, said Ethan when they were intertwined afterwards, sweaty and breathless. I love you too, forever. Forever, he agreed, not knowing that the next morning everything would change again, because Victor Chambers had decided it was time to stop playing games, and the rules of the game were about to change drastically. The next day, Isabella woke up alone in bed. Ethan was in the kitchen speaking quietly on the phone. When he saw her, he quickly hung up. Who was that? Press contact. They want more evidence before publishing the next part of the story. But there was something in his look that made her suspect that wasn't quite it. Ethan, what are you hiding from me? Nothing, just I'm worried about tonight's meeting. I'm worried too, but it's our only chance. Yes, our only chance. They spent the day in growing tension. They checked and rechecked the plans, escape routes, weapons. Ethan made several calls to people Isabella didn't know, conversations in codes she didn't understand. When night fell, they dressed as if they were going to war. Dark clothes, bulletproof vests Ethan had obtained from some mysterious source, weapons hidden at various points on their bodies. Ready? Asked Ethan, checking the pistol one last time. Ready. They left the apartment and took a taxi to a part of the city Isabella didn't know. Abandoned warehouses, deserted streets, the kind of place where bad things happened and no one saw. The meeting place was an empty warehouse that had once been a factory. Broken windows, rusted machinery, the smell of old oil and decay. Robert. Sanders was waiting for them inside, thinner and older than Isabella remembered, but alive. When he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. Isabella, my girl. Dad. The word came out colder than she had expected. I know I have a lot to apologize for, a lot to answer for. You really do. Robert turned to Ethan. And you must be the man taking care of my daughter. I'm trying to keep her alive, said Ethan. Did you bring the documents? Robert pointed to a briefcase on the floor. Everything is there. 5 years of evidence about Chambers' operation. Bank documents recorded. Conversations, transaction records. Enough to put him in jail for 100 years. Why did you keep all this? Why didn't you turn it over to the authorities? Because the authorities were compromised. Chambers has people everywhere. Police, prosecutors, judiciary. It was my only guarantee of life. And now he's discovered where I am. It's a matter of time until he finds me. Better to use this information while I can. The sound of cars approaching made them all tense up. Many cars. They found us, said Ethan, drawing his weapon. Were you followed? I don't know how, but the truth hit Isabella like lightning. The phone. They tracked the phone when my father called. Headlights invaded the warehouse through the broken windows. Voices shouting orders. The sound of boots running. On the asphalt. Back exit, said Robert. There's a tunnel that leads to the next block. They ran through the dark warehouse. Ethan protecting Isabella. Robert carrying the precious briefcase. They reached the back exit just as the front door exploded. Armed men invaded the warehouse, but they were already in the tunnel. The tunnel was narrow, dark, and smelled of dampness and dead rats. They ran for what seemed like hours, but were probably minutes, until they emerged onto an adjacent street. My car, said Robert, pointing to an old sedan parked on the corner. They ran to the car, but when they got there they realized they weren't alone. Victor Chambers was waiting for them, leaning against the hood of the car, flanked by a dozen armed men. Good evening, he said, as if he were greeting old friends. Robert, my old friend. What a pleasure to finally find you. Chambers was a man in his 60s, elegant despite the situation, with grey hair and eyes that seemed to have seen too much. There was a calmness about him that was more frightening than any display of anger. Victor, said Robert, his voice trembling, and this must be the famous Ethan Blackwood, the man who has given me so many headaches in recent years. The man who will destroy you, corrected Ethan. Ah, what adorable confidence. And this, Chambers looked at Isabella with predatory interest, must be the charming Isabella. The key to all this. Leave her out of this, said Ethan, placing himself in front of Isabella. Oh, but she is exactly what this involves. She is the reason Robert came out of hiding. She is the reason you became too emotionally involved to think clearly. Chambers smiled. She is your weakness, Ethan, and weaknesses can be exploited. What do you want? I want the briefcase. I want you to forget everything you discovered, and I want you to disappear from my life forever. In exchange for what? In exchange for staying alive. And if we refuse, Chambers made a gesture and his men raised their weapons, then you die here tonight. And I get the briefcase anyway. Robert stepped forward. Victor, this is between you and me. Leave them out of it. Robert, after 5 years, you still don't understand how this works. It's not just about you. It's about control. It's about making an example. What kind of example? The kind that ensures no one else will try to challenge me. Chambers moved away from the car and approached them. You know, Robert, you could have made things easier. You could have stayed quiet, kept your mouth shut, lived a quiet life with the money I paid you over the years. You killed Claire. Claire stuck her nose where it didn't belong. Just like you're doing now. She was your daughter too. She was a bastard who threatened everything I built. The coldness with which he said this made Isabella feel nauseated. This man had killed his own daughter without hesitation. Now, continued Chambers, let's resolve this in a civilized manner. Robert, give me the briefcase. No. Robert. I said no. This information will be made public. The world will know what kind of monster you are. Chambers sighed, as if he were dealing with a stubborn child. Very well, if we can't resolve this in a friendly manner. He made another gesture, and one of his men quickly approached Isabella, grabbing her before Ethan could react. Now, said Chambers, let's try again. Give me the briefcase, or I kill your daughter in front of you. The man pressed a pistol, against Isabella's temple. She could feel the cold metal against her skin, could smell the sweat and violence of the man holding her. "Dad," she said, her voice surprisingly calm, "don't give it to him. Isabella is... Don't give it. Claire died for this truth. Don't let her death be in vain." "How touching," said Chambers, "but I don't have patience for family drama." He signaled to the man holding Isabella. The man moved, the pistol from her temple to her shoulder, and pulled the trigger. The pain that exploded through Isabella's body was like liquid fire. She screamed and fell to her knees, blood seeping between her fingers as she tried to press the wound. "The next one will be in the heart," said Chambers calmly. "The briefcase, Robert." Ethan was looking at Isabella fallen on the ground, his face a mask of homicidal fury. "I'm going to kill you," he said to Chambers. "I'm going to kill you with my bare hands." "Perhaps, but first, you'll watch her die." Robert looked at his daughter bleeding on the ground, at Ethan ready to attack like a wounded animal, at Chambers patiently waiting for him to make the decision that would save or condemn them all. And then he did something no one expected. He opened the briefcase, but instead of handing it to Chambers, he began throwing documents into the wind. "If I can't use this evidence to destroy you," he shouted, "at least I can prevent you from destroying it." The papers flew everywhere, spreading through the street like somber confetti. Chambers roared with rage and made a desperate gesture to his men. "Kill them all, now!" What followed was chaos. Shots echoed through the street. Ethan threw himself over Isabella to protect her. Robert continued spreading documents even as bullets flew around him. And in the midst of all that violence, Isabella noticed something that would change everything. Some of the documents her father had scattered were falling close enough for her to read, and what she saw made her temporarily forget the pain in her shoulder. They weren't just evidence of corruption and money laundering. They were evidence about her. Documents proving that Victor Chambers was her real father. Robert Sanders wasn't just Claire's father. He was also a lie about his own paternity. She was the daughter of a monster. And now she understood why she was so important to Chambers. It wasn't just about silencing witnesses or recovering evidence. It was about killing his own daughter before she discovered the truth about who she really was. The world slowed down around Isabella when the truth hit her like a hammer to the chest. The documents scattered by the wind revealed an altered birth certificate, records of monthly payments made by Victor Chambers to Catherine Sanders, and a handwritten letter from him acknowledging paternity. 22 years of lies unraveled before her eyes as bullets flew around her. Ethan was pressed against her, using his own body as a shield, whispering urgent words she could barely hear through the sound of gunfire and the buzzing in her ears. The blood from her wounded shoulder was spreading a warm, sticky stain on her blouse, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the horror of discovering her true lineage. "Isabella!" Ethan was gently shaking her. "I need you to move, now." She blinked, returning to the brutal reality of the situation. Robert had hidden behind a dumpster, still throwing documents into the wind whenever he had the opportunity. Chambers' men were trying to collect the papers while maintaining fire, creating a confusion that gave them a small chance of survival. "Can you run?" asked Ethan, quickly examining her shoulder wound. "I can," she lied, although she felt waves of dizziness. "There's an exit over there." He pointed to a narrow alley between two buildings. "On my count of 3, we run." "And my father? He'll have to fend for himself." "No, I won't leave him here. Isabella, he's trying to give us time to escape. Don't waste his sacrifice." She looked at Robert, who was still desperately spreading evidence, even with bullets ricocheting around him. For 5 years she had hated that man for abandoning the family. Now she realized he had spent all that time trying to protect them from the most terrible truth of all. "Robert!" shouted Chambers above the noise of the gunfire. "Stop it! You're destroying years of work." "Exactly!" Robert shouted back. "Let the world see what kind of monster you are." Chambers made a violent gesture, and 2 of his men advanced toward Robert. Ethan saw the opening and pulled Isabella. "Now!" They ran through the confusion of gunfire, flying paper and shouting men. Isabella felt a bullet whiz past her ear, but managed to keep her balance until they reached the alley. "Keep running," ordered Ethan, pushing her ahead. "Don't stop for anything." The alley was narrow and dark, full of garbage and puddles of dirty water. They ran for what seemed like miles, but were probably just a few blocks, until they emerged onto a busier street. "Here," said Ethan, stopping a passing taxi. "General Hospital. It's an emergency." During the ride to the hospital, Isabella finally managed to process what she had discovered. "Ethan," she said, her voice weak from blood loss, "I saw the documents. Chambers he's my father." Ethan pulled her closer. "I know." "You know?" "I suspected when I saw how he looked at you, and I confirmed it when I saw your reaction to the documents." He touched her face gently. "But that doesn't change anything between us." "How can it not change? He's a murderer. He killed Claire, killed your other women, probably killed your parents, and you're not responsible for his crimes." "But I'm his daughter. I have his blood. You have the heart of the woman who raised you. Catherine may have lied about many things, but she taught you to be kind, brave, loyal. Those qualities come from how you were raised, not from who fathered you." The taxi stopped in front of the hospital. Ethan carried Isabella to the emergency room where she was immediately attended to. The bullet had gone through her shoulder, without hitting bones or vital organs, but she had lost a lot of blood. While the doctors took care of her, Ethan made several urgent calls. When she woke up a few hours later, he was sitting next to her bed with an expression that mixed relief and tension. "Robert?" she asked immediately. "Alive. Wounded, but alive. He managed to escape after we left." "And Chambers?" "Fled. But he won't run for long." "What do you mean?" Ethan smiled, and there was something savage in that smile. "Robert managed to scatter enough documents for journalists and security cameras in the area to record everything. The story is already being broadcast on all news channels. Chambers is being sought by the entire federal police, but he has connections. Had. When you're exposed publicly like this, even the most powerful allies abandon you to save their own skin." A nurse entered the room. "Miss Sanders, there are some people here who would like to speak with you. Federal agents." The agents who entered were different from what Isabella had expected. A middle-aged woman with kind but determined eyes, and a young man who seemed to take himself very seriously. "Miss Sanders, Mr. Blackwood, I'm Agent Rebecca Marshall, and this is Agent Thomas Walker. We need to talk about Victor Chambers." "Is he wanted?" asked Ethan. "Officially, yes, but we also want to propose a deal." "What kind of deal?" Agent Marshall sat in a chair near the bed. "We know you have more evidence beyond what was scattered last night. Evidence that could ensure not just Chambers' imprisonment, but that of his entire network. And in exchange, complete protection, new identities if necessary, and the guarantee that Chambers will never again be a threat to you." Isabella looked at Ethan. "What do you think?" "I think 5 years of revenge is enough. It's time to let justice take its course." "There's one condition," said Agent Marshall. "Chambers is trying to leave the country. We have a few hours to locate him before he escapes. We need you to help us lure him to a location where we can arrest him." "How?" "He still believes he can negotiate with you, especially now that he knows about the family relationship." Isabella felt a chill. "He knows he's my father." "He always knew. That's why he kept your mother alive all these years, and why he was so interested specifically in you. But why now? Why didn't he try to make contact before?" Agent Walker spoke for the first time. "Because he needed you as leverage against Robert, but also because he was planning something bigger." "What?" "Making you his legitimate heir. With Robert dead and you under his control, Chambers would have someone to leave his criminal empire to, someone he could mold and control." The idea made her feel nauseated. "He wanted to turn me into a female version of himself." "He wanted to, and still wants to, if he can get his hands on you." Ethan rose abruptly. "That's not going to happen." "Not if you agree to help us," said Agent Marshall. "We can use his interest in Isabella to lure him into a trap." "Absolutely not," said Ethan. I'm not using Isabella as bait. It wouldn't be bait. It would be a controlled meeting with complete protection. Chambers believes he can convince Isabella to join him voluntarily. We can use that arrogance against him. Isabella touched Ethan's arm. I want to do this. Isabella, no. Ethan, this man killed my sister, may have killed your parents, killed innocent people for years. If I can help stop him. It's too dangerous. Our whole life has been dangerous since we met. At least now we can do something that means something. The agents exchanged a look. There's something else you need to know, said Agent Marshall. Vanessa Morgan was found dead this morning. Ethan turned pale. How? Apparent suicide. But we believe Chambers eliminated her because she knew too much and was becoming unstable. So he's killing even his own allies. Desperate men do desperate things. That's why we need to act quickly. 2 hours later, Isabella was sitting at a table in a discreet downtown cafe, wearing a bulletproof vest hidden under a loose sweater. Ethan was in a surveillance van 2 blocks away, along with a team of federal agents, monitoring every movement through hidden cameras and an almost invisible microphone in her collar. The plan was simple. Chambers had agreed to meet with her, supposedly for a father and daughter conversation. He believed he could convince her that they were family, that she should join him against the world that didn't understand them. He arrived punctually at 3 in the afternoon, looking surprisingly relaxed for a man wanted by the entire federal police. He wore an expensive suit, perfectly groomed hair, as if he were going to a normal business meeting. Isabella, he said, sitting in the chair across from her, you look exactly like your mother when she was young. Which one, Catherine or Elizabeth? Chambers smiled. Smart, I like that. Catherine, obviously. Elizabeth was beautiful, but Catherine had fire, had passion. Passion enough to let you ruin her life. I didn't ruin anyone's life. I gave her a better life than she would ever have had alone. By forcing her to lie about her daughter's paternity, making her live in fear for years, protecting you both from a world that wouldn't understand you. Isabella had to control herself not to scream. You killed Claire, your own daughter. Claire stuck her nose where it didn't belong. She was threatening everything I built, everything I intended to leave to you. To me? You're my heir, Isabella. My only living daughter. Everything I own, my entire empire, can be yours. Your empire is built on blood and lies. My empire is power, and power is the only thing that matters in this world. Chambers leaned forward. You've spent your entire life being poor, being insignificant. I can give you everything you've ever wanted. And what would I have to do in exchange? Come with me, learn the business, become the powerful woman you were born to be. And Ethan. Ethan is an obstacle. Men like him only hold you back. Men like him make me want to be better. Men like him are weak. They let themselves be guided by emotions, by morality. In the real world, those are weaknesses that get you killed. Isabella looked at the man sitting across from her, her biological father, a monster who had destroyed so many lives. Do you really believe that? I believe it, because it's true. And deep down, you know it's true too. I can see it in your eyes. You hunger for power, for control. It's Chambers' blood running in your veins. If I hunger for anything, it's justice. Justice? Chambers laughed. Justice is a concept invented by the weak to control the strong. The only real justice is what you can take for yourself. Then take this. Isabella stood up and in a quick movement pulled a digital recorder from her pocket, showing that she had recorded the entire conversation. Complete confession by Victor Chambers, murderer of Claire Blackwood, and numerous other victims. Chambers' face contorted with rage. You little... He couldn't finish the sentence because federal agents emerged from all directions, surrounding the cafe. Chambers tried to draw a weapon but was immobilized before he could make any movement. Victor Chambers, said Agent Marshall, you're under arrest for multiple murder, money laundering, corruption, and criminal conspiracy. As they led him away, in handcuffs, Chambers shouted at Isabella, You'll regret this. You're my daughter, my blood. I'm the daughter of the woman who raised me, she shouted back, and of the man who taught me what courage means. You are nothing to me. Ethan came running to the cafe, pulling her into his arms in a desperate embrace. It's over, he said in her ear. Finally over. It's over, she agreed, feeling tears of relief streaming down her face. 3 months later, Isabella was standing on the veranda of the mansion in the Sierra Mountains, watching the sunset paint the gardens golden red. The shoulder wound had healed completely, leaving only a small scar that she had decided not to hide. It was part of her story now, part of who she had become. Chambers' trial had been a national spectacle. With the evidence they had and his recorded confession, he had been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His corruption network had been dismantled, resulting in the imprisonment of dozens of corrupt politicians and businessmen. Robert had survived his injuries and was currently in the witness protection program, trying to rebuild his life away from the shadows of the past. He and Isabella had spoken a few times on the phone, difficult conversations full of pleas for forgiveness and attempts at explanation, but also signs that perhaps, eventually, they could have some kind of relationship. Catherine had moved to a small but comfortable house in Hartford, bought with money the government had confiscated from Chambers' assets and distributed to his victims. She was in therapy, dealing with decades of secrets and fears, slowly learning to live without the constant weight of terror. "What are you thinking about?" asked Ethan, approaching from behind and wrapping his arms around her. "About how everything has changed. 6 months ago I was living a small, insignificant life. Now you're a woman who helped bring down one of the most powerful criminals in the country. Now I'm a woman who knows who she really is." Ethan turned her to face him. "And who are you?" "I'm strong, I'm brave. I'm someone who fights for what she believes in," she smiled. "And I'm hopelessly in love with a man who taught me that love can heal even the deepest wounds." "That man must be very lucky." "He is, because I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving to him how much he means to me." Ethan kissed her softly. "And about this whole life, do you have any specific plans?" "Actually, I do." Isabella took a small velvet box from her pocket. "Ethan Blackwood, will you marry me?" His eyes widened in surprise. "Isabella, I know it's usually the man who proposes, but I've discovered I don't like waiting for other people to make the important decisions in my life." Ethan took the box and opened it, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "Where did you get this?" "It was my grandmother's, the only thing of value I owned, and now I want it to be yours." "Isabella, If you don't want to, I understand. I know we're still getting to know each other. I know our story began in a strange way." Ethan silenced her with a passionate kiss. When they separated, both were breathing heavily. "Yes," he said. "Yes. Yes, I want to marry you. Yes, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Yes, I want to build something new and beautiful from the ashes of our past." Isabella laughed, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "Then you'd better put that ring on." Ethan slid the ring onto his own finger, and the fit was perfect. "Now we're officially engaged," he said. "Now we're officially a family." They kissed again, more deeply this time, sealing a promise that had been forged in the fire of adversity and tempered by the strength of a love that had survived the worst tests. When they separated, Ethan pointed to the interior of the mansion. "There's something I want to show you." He led her through the house until they reached a room she had never seen before. It was a fully equipped art studio with work tables, restoration tools, and empty shelves waiting for books. "What is this?" "Your new workshop. I thought perhaps you'd like to return to book restoration, but this time working on rare first editions, historical manuscripts, things that really matter." Isabella walked around the room, touching the carefully organized tools, feeling the comforting familiarity of her craft. "And you? Will you continue with business?" "I will, but not in the same way. I want to transform everything I've built into something positive, fund education, art, causes that make a difference." Ethan approached her. "I want our life together to mean something." "It already does." It means that two wounded people found a way to heal each other, and that two lost souls found their way home. Isabella turned to him. Ethan. Yes? I love you, not just because you saved me or because you made me feel safe. I love you because you saw me as I really was before I even saw myself. You loved me when I was still learning to love myself. And I love you because you brought light to the darkness my life had become. Because you showed me that revenge isn't the only way to honor the dead. That sometimes the best way to honor them is by building something beautiful on the ruins they left behind. 6 months later, they married in a small intimate ceremony in the mansion's gardens. Catherine was there, healthier and happier than Isabella had seen her in years. Robert participated via video conference from his protected location, his eyes full of tears of pride when he saw his daughter radiating happiness. Mrs. Wilson had become a maternal figure for Isabella, helping her plan the wedding and adapt to married life. The mansion's staff, who had initially viewed her with suspicion, now treated her with the affection reserved for someone who had brought life back to that house haunted by ghosts. "You may kiss the bride," said the justice of the peace. When Ethan kissed her, sealing their union, Isabella felt as if her whole world was finally complete, not because she needed a man to feel complete, but because she had found someone whose dreams aligned with hers, whose fears she could soothe, and whose strength complemented her own. During the party, as they danced alone in the hall that had been decorated with flowers and candles, Ethan whispered in her ear, "So, Mrs. Blackwood, how does it feel being a married woman?" "It feels like I'm beginning the real adventure of my life." "And what kind of adventure are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about traveling the world together, restoring books in ancient libraries, discovering lost stories." She smiled. "I'm thinking about having children someday. Children who will grow up knowing they are unconditionally loved. Children who will grow up in a house full of books and love, not secrets and fear." Exactly. They danced until late into the night, lost in each other, lost in the promise of a future they would build together. When they finally went up to their renovated quarters, now truly both their bedroom, Isabella felt as if she were entering a completely new life. "Ethan," she said, as he helped her remove her wedding dress. "Yes, my wife?" The word wife made her smile. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing in me someone worth saving. For loving me enough to let me save myself. Thank you for giving me a reason to live beyond pain." They made love that night as husband and wife for the first time, not with the desperate urgency of their first encounters, but with the deep tenderness of two people who knew they had all the time in the world to discover and rediscover each other. Years later, when Isabella looked back at that terrible night when she arrived at the mansion as payment for a debt, she marveled at the strange paths fate sometimes takes. She had arrived there as a prisoner, but had become truly free for the first time in her life. She had arrived seeking financial security for her family, but had found an emotional wealth that no money could buy. She had arrived believing she was the daughter of a coward and granddaughter of humble workers, but had discovered she was the heir to her own strength, architect of her own destiny. And most important of all, she had arrived alone, but had found her other half in the form of a man who had also been lost until their paths crossed in the most unlikely place. The mansion in the Sierra Mountains was no longer a mausoleum of pain and revenge. It had become a home full of laughter, books being restored, shared dinners, and the constant promise that no matter how dark the night might seem, morning always comes. And sometimes, if you have a lot of luck and a lot of courage, the morning brings with it everything you never knew you were looking for. Ethan and Isabella had found that in each other. They had found that true love isn't about completing a person, it's about two complete people who choose to build an extraordinary life together. In the shadows of the Sierra Mountains, where everything had begun, they built their own light. And that light would be strong enough to last for the entire life they would share, forever.